Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to the Linguist Show, where in today's episode, we are going to be talking about translation studies and the theories in translation. In today's episode, we have a few honorable guests. We have Miss Farah Khairil, Miss Aina Halim, Miss Ismahani Kamal, and last but not least, Miss Sabrina Audi. And for today's host, we have me, Miss Aida Jabit. So, in translation theories, we have a lot of new theories that are being discussed on to us in order to assess the analysis of translation and many more. However, before we know more about these new translation theories, first we need to know the base foundation of these theories, which are the Halliday's model system of functional linguistics. So I would like to invite Ms. Farah Khairil to further discuss on this model.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Before that, I would like to thank our host for today, Miss Aida J, and also my fellow panelists here. So, I will be discussing on the model that Halliday has actually presented on the early days of the linguistic field. So, I would share my screen. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. So here, if you can see this table here. Okay, so before we go to further on the relation of this model. So actually, systematic functional grammar is a study of a language as a communication, where they actually studies the linguistic choices that the writer or the author is actually looking into. And these linguistic choices that they have chosen actually relates to the socio-cultural framework, where the choices, the use of words are actually presented to the real audience, to the audience that they are actually focusing on. So there is a strong relation between surface level of realization of linguistic function and also the socio-cultural framework. So this socio-cultural framework, if you can see here, there is a socio-cultural environment, genre, register, discourse semantics, and also lexicography. Okay, so looking into the audience that we are actually focusing on, it has its genre, where the genre is the text that is associated with speaker's communicative function. We need to understand what is actually the context of the text that we are trying to tell the people. So next is register. Where's the register analysis? So there are three variables that is talking about in register, which is the field, tenor, and also mode. So field is focusing on what is the text written about, what is the language used, okay? And second is tenor, which is communication with whom and who, the communication between a person with a person another. And last is the mode, where there is a form of communication, what kind of communication being used, either written or speaking. But in this context, it is focusing on written text. Okay. So then these three variables, which is field, tenor, and also mode, brings to a strand of discourse semantics. So these three, ideational, interpersonal, and textual, okay, these are actually related to these three above our register. So field actually is associated with ideational, which actually is on the patterns, on the verbs, active or passive sentences. Okay? So tenor is associated with the interpersonal, that is regarding to the modal verbs and also adverbs, such as hopefully, should, and such. Okay, and last but not least is mode. Mode is related to the strand relating to textual, where they have the thematic and information sources, the order structure of the text, and cohesion. How does the text actually hangs, combines with each other? All right, and last in this model here is the lexicogrammar, where they have all of these mixed ones, and it is combined with all of these linguistic functions above, and they have actually given the text with the meaning, the context of the text. Okay, so I hope that you guys, you people, the audience, can understand what is actually being speaked on the function, well, the holiday model structure. Okay, so that's all from me. Thank you. Pass it to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farakario, for the to give us the basic understanding on holiday systemic functional linguistic model. So after we have known on what are the basic concepts that we need to know, of course, we need to know how do we actually assess what are the areas being done by translators in translating the text in the linguistic world. So I would like to invite Miss Aina Halim to explain more on the houses model of translation quality assessment, please.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Aida, for moderating today's session. So I'll be speaking about House's model of translation quality assessment. Now, House rejects the more target audience-oriented notion of translation appropriateness as fundamentally misguided. So she bases off her model on comparative source text to target text analysis, leading to the assessment of the quality of the translation, highlighting the mismatches or the errors. Now, her original model caught a lot of attention and it got like criticized all over, that she tackled it in her latest one, which will be this one you're seeing in a bit. There you go. So this model incorporates some of House's earlier categories into an openly Halidayan register analysis of field, banner, and mode, just like Farah presented just now. Now, this model involves this very systematic comparison of the textual profile of the ST and the TT. The comparative model draws on various and sometimes complex taxonomies, but it can be reduced to a register analysis of both ST and TT according to the realization. This can be done through lexical, syntactic, and textual means. Now, textual means refers to number one, theme dynamics, which are the thematic structure and cohesion. Number two, causal linkage, which is the additive, things such as and, in addition, things like that. And adversative, but, however, things like that. And number three is iconic linkage, which is the parallelism of structures. You get that? Okay, and then in the model, okay, if you refer to this, register here covers a variety of elements, some of which are additional to those expressly stated by Halliday. And then field refers to the subject matter and the social action and covers the specificity of the lexical items of it. And tenor here, it includes the addresses temporal, geographical, and social provenance, as well as their intellectual or affective stance and social attitude. Here, under this, refers to the formal, consultative, or informal style of it. And mode here relates to the channel, which is like, for example, spoken, written, and the degree of participation between the addresser and the addressee. And here is how, basically, here's how it operates. Now, a profile is produced of the source text register. Source text, ST register. Now, to this, it added a description, of the ST genre realized by the register. Together, this allows a statement of function to be made of the ST, including the additional and the interpersonal component of that function, or in other words, what information is being conveyed and what are the relationship between the sender and the receiver. Now, the same descriptive process is then carried out for the TT. Now, the TT profile is compared to the ST profile, and a statement of mismatches or errors is produced, and then it's categorized according to the genre and to the situational dimensions of these registers and genres. And then a statement of quality is then made of the translation. And then finally, the translation can be categorized into one of the two types, which is overt translation and covert translation. Now, an overt translation, if you may ask, is a TT that does not purport to be an original. So House defines this as it addresses the translation texts that are quite overtly not being directly addressed. Okay, and covert translation, on the other hand, is a translation which enjoys the status of an original source text in the target culture. So the ST is not linked to particularly to the ST culture or audience. Both ST and TT addresses their respective receivers directly. Now, an easy example would be tourist information book and letter from chairman to their, what is it called? What is that? Hold up. What is the English word for no. Orang yang berkepentingan. Yes, that. I'm sorry. It's okay. So anyway, so function of a covert translation is to recreate, reproduce, or to represent in the translated text to the function the original has in its lingual cultural framework and discourse of the world. So it does
Sorry
this
to
without
interrupt. The word
Yes.
you're looking is shareholders.
shareholders. Thank you so much. No, it does, going back. So it does this without taking the TT reader into the discourse world of the ST. Take the letter from the chairman to the shareholder study. So let's say the chairman is a German, right? So he writes the letters in Germany, and then when translating, the person translating it to English, they have to make it a bit more interpersonal, since English is more interpersonal compared to German, to the German language that is rather just very direct. So I hope my explanation was clear enough, and I hope that helps everybody. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. I'll pass it back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aina, for the explanation on House's model of translation quality assessment, where we just learned on how can we actually assess the quality of a translation as well as different types of translation just now. And next up, we have Mrs. Mahani Kamal, who is going to be explaining on Baker's text and pragmatic level of analysis. Just now, we have heard many elements of translation theories. What are the additional elements that is added in this Baker's text and pragmatic level of analysis? Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Miss Moderator Aida. So today, I know this is a bit different, but we had technical issues, so I pre-recorded. So I will be sharing with you on the Baker's text and pragmatic level analysis, which this is Mona Baker's concept or model that is extended from Halliday's model of lexicogrammar. So she had outlined two model, which is thematic structure and also pragmatic equivalence. So in overview, if you remember, we learned discourse analysis with Madam Tiba on crocodiles, where in English we had a lot of types of crocodiles, not types, a species of crocodiles like alligators, lizards, But then when we translate it in Malay, we only have one, right? That is buaya. So same thing when we had rice in Malay, we have different types of rice. Nasi impit, nasi lemak, nasi this, nasi that. But in English, they just describe it as one. It is rice, right? So here's an overview on what I want to say, which is when a word is being translated, it wants to have like an equivalent lexical, the most equivalent lexical to translate that thing. Okay, so so let's go to the first one, the thematic structure. So what is thematic structure? Thematic structure has two, that is theme and rhyme. So what is theme and rhyme? Theme and rhyme is, for example, here I give to you, is when the English as a source text, I discussed this matter in Washington. So I here is the theme and the others are rhyme in a sentence. However, when it goes to the target text, for example, Portuguese, discuti este asunto en Washington. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Discuti here is the theme, and the other one and the others are the rhyme. Okay. So what Baker's trying to highlight here is that the theme is in any theme is in the first position, come what may. Any words that is in the first sentence is theme, either given what it is, either it is verb or subject or object. Like just I gave before is English is the theme is the object, right? But Portuguese, the discuss is the verb. So any words that is in the first sentence is theme based on Mona Baker. Okay, so what is the problem here is that when we translated source text from source text to a target text, that is not equivalent with the word order, so it will become a monotonous translation. So Mona Baker highlighted that it is important and we need to be aware of relative markedness, where it can help to heighten our awareness of meaningful choices made by speakers in the course of communication. Okay, so we go to the next one, is the pragmatics equivalence. So pragmatic, as we know, is the study of language, is the study of meaning, not as generated by the linguistic system, but as conveyed by participants in a communicative situation. So Mona Baker has outlined three pragmatics equivalents. Those are coherence, presupposition, and implicature. So let's go to the first one, coherence. So as we know that coherence will always relate it to cohesion. So in cohesion, let's see. So in cohesion, we are focusing on the micro level of structure in a sentence, which are repeated words, references, transition signals like secondly, furthermore, lastly. We have also substitution and also ellipses. Okay, so in coherence, on the other hand, it is more focus on the macro level of structure. For example, the topic sentence and also the summary. So in Mona Baker highlighted that the coherence depends on the listener's expectations and experience. So let's go into the example for coherence. So we have here Malay as a source text and English as the target text. Okay. So, bendera Malaysia mempunyai 14 jalur merah dan putih bersama bintang dan bulan yang berwarna kuning. Jalur gemilang ini adalah bukti kesatuan tanah Melayu yang mencapai kemerdekaan. In English, the Malaysian flag has 14 red and white stripes with a yellow star and a moon. The flag is considered as an evidence of unity among Malaysians in achieving independence. So, the yellow here is the bendera Malaysia, which is translated as Malaysian flag. But how can we translate jalur gemilang? In target text, it is better, according to Mona Baker, to have the cohesion structure of using the repetitive words, the flag, as the inference for the jalur gemilang. Okay, so next one is the presupposition. Presupposition Mona Baker defined it as pragmatic inference, where we assume that what the speakers are saying based on our experience. Why it is based on our experience? Presupposition, if you remember what I said, it is related to coherence. Coherence, it depends on the listeners' expectations and also experience. So, for example, UIA ni bagus lah. So, or either way, we want to say UIA. We are not satisfied with UIA. We say UIA ni ada-ada je lah. Right. So, we as listeners, we understand that UIA here does not mean that UIA itself, as UIA is not alive, right? So UIA here, we assume that the listeners are talking about the management of the UIA. Okay, so the last one is the implicature. Implicature is translate what the speaker means or implies rather than what he says. So Mona Baker has outlined set rules for implicature. The first one is the quantity. We put amount of information as necessary as we can, not too much, not too little. And quality, we only say which you know to be true. The third one is relevance. It must be relevant to the discussion or the conversation. And lastly is the manner. So we need to say what you need to say appropriately. So for example, I give here is Arabic translation. There is a vulgar jokes about in English about God is not exist. So when it is translated into Arabic, the part of the God not exist there is omitted, because we know that Arab people are so it is taboo for Arab people to say those kinds of jokes about God. So we had to really know about that culture to translate it appropriately. So that is all from me. Thank you very much. I pass the floor back to moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fahani, for the very informative um, explanation on Baker's text and pragmatic level analysis. You even give the examples in the context of the audience understanding. So I found that very helpful for our audience to understand. So we move on to our last speaker, Ms. Sabrina Auni, who is going to share on Halim's and Mason semiotic level of context and discourse in translation studies.
Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you, moderator Aida, our lovely moderator today. So I will share my screen first. Okay, so on my part, I will be presenting, I will be sharing on the Hatim and Mason's semiotic level of context and discourse. Okay. So this model is actually comes from Halidayan model of language, which was explained by our panel, Farah, just now. So Hatim and Mason developed their own model with incorporating the ideational and interpersonal from the Halliday model of language. So let's look at the example of ideational function. So from the passage from this étranger, do I pronounce it correctly? I don't know because it is in French. So
L'étranger. I think the pronunciation is l'étranger.
l'étranger. Okay,
Yes.
l'étranger. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so in this novel, there is a situation. There is a sort of scene where Meso kills an Arab on the beach, and this passage was translated. The French one, as you can see here, it literally meaning I clenched my hand, I touched the polish belly of the butt, I fired, I was striking on the door, misfortune. So this literally really focus on I aspect, which is the active. Rather than when it was being translated, it was translated as on my. it was focused on my, which is, for example, my grip close, the smooth underbelly of the butt jug in my palm. I fired and then the lock fit full wrap on the door of my doing, my undoing. So it's more focused on my. So this from this view, the translator, when he or she read all the novel, it's talk about the character of the Moso itself, uh, himself. I mean, so this character is more of a passive character. So when the translator translating this French source text into target text, it it uses this my, it focus on my rather than I to show that this character is a passive. Do you get it? Okay. So next we'll be moving on to the modality, which is the interpersonal function. So for the modality, uh, for example, the translation of a French conditional of allegation rumor in a European Parliament debate. So this translation is actually it's more indicating on the possibility in English. There are words that indicate of possibility in English, but when it was being translated by a the trainee interpreters, it was translated as being certainty using certainty words such as had been prepared, when it was actually indicate the possibility, modality of possibility in English, like this one was probably prepared by the receivers or can be used by with which it is rumored was prepared by the receivers. So this is what they mean by the modality. They represent discourse in its wider sense, which is the discourse that they mean is modes of speaking and writing which involve social groups in adopting a particular attitude towards area of social cultural activities such as the racist discourse, bureaucrats, and etc. So, for example, just now, the translator giving their own opinion about the character, which is the passive. So he or she translated it with the my focus on my rather than I. So that is all from me. Thank you. I'll pass this to moderator again.
Thank you very much, Miss Sabrina Auni, for explaining on the Hutchinson Mason semiotic level of context discourse. So we have heard on each of different theories in translation studies on how can we analyze in translation, how can we identify the errors in translation, even how translation can be done within the context of the source text and the target text. However, it comes to the question on some of the criticism that are that are criticism by the linguists and researchers on these theories. First and foremost, there are criticism on the holidays model, in which that as presented by Ms. Farah just now, the models the models use complicated grammatical categorization, where researchers find it complicated to analyze translated text. And then for the houses model of translation quality assessment, because it is a quality assessment, therefore of course, it is assessing the quality of the translation, the translated text, where in this model, it explained about the mismatches between the target text and the source text, where it indicates the errors that are being done by the translators in the target text. However, researchers has raised a question in which whether there is a possibility to recover the authors, where there is a possibility to recover the author's intention in the source text, the intention in source text being recovered in the target text. So because House here only mentioned the errors, however, the model doesn't explain on how can the translator recover these errors. And at the same time, the examples given did not include other factors that could create these translation errors, such as the explication and the compensation by the translators. And last but not least, as to sum up as a whole, all of these models of translation studies, they are using English as the target text of from the source text. So this raises the question on all the frameworks in the theories using English as the are using English as a translated text. So therefore, it raised the question on whether or not this framework can be done using in translating, for example, between other European texts, between, for example, I take between Germany and Bahasa Malaysia, in which they have different lexical structure, different grammatical structure. So the frameworks are limited into translating between one language to the English structure. So those are the criticisms that are being raised by researchers and linguists out there. So I find that each of the panels have given a very insightful information on uh, linguistic theories in terms of discourse analysis. So I hope all of our audience get a lot of knowledge, and I hope um, our audience out there have an understanding on how can we apply these translation theories in terms of discourse in their daily life. Thank you very much. See you again in the next episode of the Linguist Show. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.